know if that's gonna make it in. Oh, it looks like it will. See, that's the thing about using OBS, girl. Because the lag on this is so real, girl. Now I'm watching it. I'm watching it. And yeah, it happened. Okay. It's fine. It's like 30 seconds behind, girl. So maybe I should give myself a buffer of just like. Hi, my name is Patrick. This is the Hierophant. Welcome. Cassandra was a past life. I'm not manifesting Cassandra energy anymore. So, the days of Cassandra's tarot dice and spiritual advice, because don't none of y'all listen to me, it's over. They're over. Let me stop. Anyway, if this is the first video that you find of mine for whatever reason, and I don't know why I'm saying this, but if this is the first video of mine that you're finding, I'd say watch a few before you subscribe if you decide to. Because there's no real sort of, I don't want to say there's no structure, but I also don't have any Virgo in my chart, so, but yeah, it's kind of sort of different, and the vibe is whatever it is and the time it is, and sometimes I'm just a this. Anyway, so what we're getting into today is the throat portal. Now, in this series, the more or less, we're looking at the more aligned energy and the lesser aligned energy. A lot of times the lesser aligned energy sort of falls into the camp of like what we think would be good or what this looked like in a previous energy when we were making the best of not great situations. But it's like if you want to make the best of the best situations, then there's some minor tweaks and adjustments that need to be made. And honestly, a lot of it is just like stripping away the old, stripping away all of the extra baggage that was put onto us because we're coming into these lighter times, or we have the potential to come into these lighter times when we go into the 5D out of the 3D. And if you're going into the 5D and out of the 3D, you don't want to take 3D baggage with you because 3D baggage is really heavy and it may have you like operating in this like 3 to maybe 4, sometimes 5 space when you're in the 5, right? So anyway, today we're looking at the throat portal, which is the throat chakra. Yesterday we looked at the heart, and then we did like we worked our way through. I'm gonna make a playlist. It actually came into my mind, and I don't know why I didn't do it. Well, I know why I didn't do it because I just jumped in the shower after I got up, and then I came on because I want to get this not out of the way, but I want to get it done, right? And so we're looking at the throat portal. It's number 40. It is speaking your truth. It is courage, and it's also, when out of balance, it can also be suppression. I had to remember. So it's number 40. At the bottom of the deck, I'm using the Magical Dimensions Oracle Cards and Activators. I actually have the book for the box right here. Magical Dimensions Oracle Cards and Activators. I'm also using the... oh gosh, there. One second. Oh, this is so gross. Oh, I know that was a lot. But imagine how I feel. I told y'all, at the end of the last video, I was like, I don't know why it's this little bit of phlegm trying to leap up out my throat. Girl, it don't happen till I come on here. You know what? I love y'all. But if y'all got throat chakra issues, y'all need to take care of that mess. Because I'm tired of this phlegm trying to leap up out my throat when I come live. I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it, okay? Just speak your gosh darn truth. Today is the throat portal, okay? Today we're looking at the throat portal. So today is the day, right? Don't wait for no Lion's Gate to say whatever you need to say. Who was I watching? I was watching somebody, and I can't remember who it was. But it was another synchronicity because I recently, within the past few days, talked about the dream I had about the race where there was this portal that was open and I was late. Well, I wasn't late, but I didn't get there earlier because I was trying to take somebody else to the portal too. And by the time we got there, the thing was closing and they hesitate. And I'm like, girl, I'm not missing this. So if you want to stay out here or if you want to hesitate and you want to wait, that's on you. I already went above and beyond dragging you here in the first place. But I'm not missing this portal. And then somebody yesterday was like, they were talking about a portal that was like closing or something. And I was like, that's confirmation, that's synchronicity. And that's like, I've also been saying, like, why are we waiting until the day of these portals to try to do or to try to manifest, right? It's like when you're already there, girl, you can be there. Like, what if there's a capacity? And I know that there's not a capacity. I know that there's not a limit. But it's like, why make things harder on yourself by trying to do it all at once when you can take advantage of the time and do it little by little, right? Like, speaking as someone who's procrastinated the majority of my life and who is in some ways still procrastinating, but in other ways allowing myself to be guided to do the things that I need to do when I need to do them. Because I've already discovered that if I do them before the time, then something happens where it needs to be undone and then redone. So there is no real benefit, I guess, to working outside of the time to do it. But also at the same time, there is. Don't ask me. We live a life of contradiction. So, getting into this, we have the throat portal. I'm going to read it. So for the way I do this, or the reason I do this, the way I do this, I said it right the first time. There are 3 keywords on each, right? Speak Your Truth is the first one. So for Speak Your Truth, I shuffled up the decks and I pulled the card immediately before and after the Sovereign of Swords, which is the Queen of Swords in this deck. For Courage, I pulled the cards immediately. I shuffled and cut again. And, you know, that video is already up if you want to watch it. I separated them because I talked about a lot of stuff in that I feel like kind of sort of stands alone, but is also sort of relevant to this. But it stands alone enough that I was like, it can be its own video. Why not? And it was already like an hour something long. So I looked for the Strength card, right? Immediately before and after. And then for Suppression, I looked for the 5 of Cups. And my first thought was to go for the 8 of Swords. But it's like the 8 of Swords in some way, it feels more entrapped than suppressed. And the difference being, like, when it's entrapped, I feel like it's convinced mentally that it's similar, but entertain me as I entertain you. It's like with the 8 of Swords, I feel like there's like this complex narrative that makes it make sense, even if it doesn't. Whereas I feel like with suppression is more voluntary. Right? It's the, like, I'm not going to say anything even though I know what's going on type energy, right? Or even though I know I have something to contribute right now, I'm not going to say anything. And then at the bottom of this deck, we have the Oracle deck. We have Transformation, Magical Realms in reverse. I don't read these in reverse, but it's in reverse. And then we have Exiled. And behind Exiled is Gaian Awakening, right? Yeah, it's Gaian Awakening. And so I feel like this is us coming out of the space where we couldn't authentically be all of who we are for fear of being exiled, for fear of being isolated, made fun of, or whatever. And it's like maybe you were some of what you were and you were still sort of like made fun of. But this is about being all of who you are, confidently embodying that, speaking from that space to the point where you, when you speak from that space, when you talk, you breathe in and out. So it's like when you're breathing out from that space, or when you're speaking from that space, you're breathing out. But when you're breathing in, the oxygen that you breathe in while you're speaking from that space fuels that fire, right? And so it's like the more that you're in that space, the stronger it gets, the brighter it gets, the more you discover it. And now with this throat portal, it's time to like really be in that space and unleash it. So we can come into all that we need to come into, right? That soul growth. And then I was like, what is a soul threatened by? And I was like, well, a soul could be threatened by not being able to express itself or not expressing itself. And it's threatened because I feel like it does something to it. It's like how a candle flame sort of like flickers and dims if like you blow on it, right? There's a fear of it going out, a fear of it being suppressed to the point where you get to that 8 of Swords, to the point where you enter that devil energy where it's just like locked up, chained up somewhere, and you got so much BS piled on top of it that you can never get to it, or it takes significant work to get back to it. But also threatened in the space that like it doesn't get to shine, right? It's like if I threaten your freedom to reply, to put a comment, not freedom, if I threaten your ability to put a comment on this video by turning off the comments, right? There's also that threat of like being shut down. So it's both an internal and external threat to expression. Anyway, so getting back into the throat portal. So we're doing the light deck for more aligned today, since this is expressive, and when we express everything, or when we express a bit of every band in the visible spectrum, we get white light, we shine it. And the lesser aligned is the dark one, because when you accept a bit from every band, you get like closer to black, right? Because when we're talking about light, and this is a light energy because it's expressive, when we're talking about pigment, that's the receptive energies. And that's when, like, for pigment, this is more aligned. For light, this is more aligned. Because white light is all light, black light is no light, right? In the visible band, the spectrum, red, orange, green, blue, indigo, violet spectrum. And then for pigment, all pigment is black and no pigment is white. And that's because pigment, it shows up the color that it shows up because that's the only color that it transmutes, or it transmits, sorry. So let's say I have this book, and I'm like, anything not red gets written on the pages of this book. So orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet all get written in the pages, but everything red can't come in. So then you see this as red because red is the only thing that comes off. And that's what your eye picks up. Everything else is in the book, so you don't see it. That's low-key, or kind of sort of in a way, how pigment versus light works. That's why black pigment is all of it, where white light is all of it, right? Because black pigment is absorbing all of it, so it doesn't give your eye anything else to see, because it took all of it, right? Girl, we're just talking today. We're talking today. This is the throat portal, so if I want to be a chatty Cathy, a Gabby Gabby, then I'm going to be a Gabby Gabby, because we're in energy today. We're in the energy of the throat. We're speaking. Also, maybe you don't want to talk too much. And I think there's like this energy of like skirting around the truth, like skirting around the issue without speaking your direct truth. That energy is passe. That energy is 2 of Swords. It's going to leave you 3 of Swords. And when you don't speak, I want to say plainly, when you don't speak plainly what it is that you wish and what you desire, I feel like it's not fair to expect it from somebody else. Because at the end of the day, even if someone claims to be psychic, even if they can read your mind, I feel like they shouldn't have to read your mind. You should be able to communicate what it is that you want. And the Bible says somewhere that you have not because you ask not, right? Speak and it will be given unto you. Girl, sometimes, it's like, well, somebody should know me. It's like, yeah, somebody should know you. That's a fair point. But have you ever been yourself enough to allow someone the opportunity to get to know the true you? Have you allowed anyone to get to know the real you? Do you even know the real you? Have you allowed yourself the opportunity to get to know you? If you don't even know you, how are you supposed to speak you or show you to the point where someone else can know you? And yeah, we can say that sometimes somebody else knows us better than we know ourselves. But at the end of the day, it's like, if you don't know yourself, there are some times where there are certain things that you don't accept because you don't know it, right? Like, I like vegetables now, a lot of vegetables. I hated vegetables growing up. But let's say I didn't know if I liked them or not. There are quite a few things that I haven't tried, honestly. And I'm just like, oh, I don't like that. And someone's like, have you ever tried it? I'm like, no, and I don't want to. But let's say that like I find out that I actually enjoy something, right? There could be things that I'm refusing because I don't know the part of me that actually enjoys it. Anyway, so let's get into this, shall we? We're going to go less to more aligned today. Oh, I have this book, and I found this Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness bookmark inside the book from when I went to Pokemon Rocks America at Navy Pier in Chicago, and it's like one of the only times in my life I've ever like actually been in Chicago, even though I'm from Illinois, because my mom doesn't like it. So she's like, I don't like Chicago, we ain't going to Chicago. But we ended up going to Chicago for this. And what's interesting here, this is when Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green were out on the Game Boy Advance. And they had this, it was like the wireless adapter that basically let it do Bluetooth, right? Basically. Before Bluetooth was like really a thing, I think. not before it was like a thing, but like before Bluetooth was like on everything, I think. Oh, because what year was this? There should be a year on here. I want to say 2002, but I know I wasn't like 9. 2005. Yeah. So it was roughly 2005. So I was like 12, right? 2005, I don't think Bluetooth was everywhere. I don't even think Wi Fi was really a thing yet because this was the Game Boy Advance that this was on. And I remember when I got the DS, I went to like McDonald's in the library because it was before Wi Fi was a thing and I wanted to play Mario Kart online, right? And then I actually ended up buying a router and looking up how to set all of that up so I could turn our internet at home so I can bring Wi-Fi to the house. Because again, at that point, Wi-Fi wasn't everywhere, but I had a DS, so I wanted Wi-Fi, so I bought a router. You know, I used to work like odds and ends jobs. Honestly, if I think about it, and we're just gonna go to this page. Oh, what this is? We're gonna read it in a second. It's a world geography book. I don't know. We'll see if it's relevant. In my life, I feel like a lot of times I was given the means to get what I want, right? Like through an odds and ends job or something like that. And when I was younger, it was very conqueror of coins, very knight of coins energy. And but when I was younger, what I would do is I would pay attention to video game news because a lot of stuff that I wanted to buy was video games. And GameStop, it only takes $5 to pre-order something. And so what I would do is I would pay attention to the news, put my $5 down on the pre-order as soon as it was up, and then I would pay the game off over time, right? It's just like with the portal, just like with the portals, just like with release days. Instead of coming out of pocket for everything at the time when I didn't really have like a job or stable income, what I would do is I would pay attention to the news, I would pay attention to the energy, and I would put in a little bit over time so that by the time release day came, my game was already paid off and I didn't have to come out of pocket for all of it, right? And it was so interesting to me in high school or growing up, like people thought that I was rich. And I'm like, somebody literally told me, they were like, I'm not rich like you, Patrick. I'm like, excuse me? I was so shocked. Cause I'm like, you think I'm rich, girl? What? No. No, rich in spirit, yes. I'm very rich in spirit. But physically, at that time, no, no. What I did was I paid attention to the news and I paid it off little by little, right? Little by little, that could be like $1, $2 here and there. That could be $5 here and there, $10 here and there. And if I wanted it enough, like whenever like an odd job or something came up, I would put that money aside for it. And like if you pay attention to the news and you have a whole year to pay for a $30, $40 game if it's on the DS, or like even a $50 game at that time, if you have a year to 2 years or a year and a half to pay it off over time, it's a lot more feasible. And like that's the only reason why I had everything on release day is because I paid it off over time. It's not because I was coming out of pocket on at release day for everything I wanted, right? But that was a lesson that I learned. And it's interesting because I talked to a financial advisor and he was like, tell me about your history with money. And when I was telling him about that, he was like, wow, that's interesting. And I've never heard that before. But it's so interesting that you sort of have that experience with like kind of sort of investment in a way on a smaller scale. But it's just like, it's interesting that you have that experience and perspective with money. And he was like, do you like, there's something about the way that you talk about like what you want. It sounds like you don't kind of sort of really need me. And he was like, he was like, you have a lot more figured out than a lot of people that I talk to. And I'm really surprised. I was like, wow, I kind of sort of am too. But, it's just life. I guess that's the way I live my life. So, anyway, so let's get into the passage. So yeah, I'm, pre-order and pay it off over time instead of trying to come out of pocket every single portal. It's like, girl. And then I feel like since you're not making such high demands of yourself in such a short time period, in such a short time frame, it limits the amount of frustration and confusion and loss and all of that other kind of stuff being lost. Because it's like, you take care of what you can take care of over time so that when it comes, You're already there. So let's see what this is. This says critical thinking and applying skills. Oh, girl. We ain't gonna read all that, but I just think, because my finger was, it was literally on critical thinking and applying skills. That's what it's about. It's about critical thinking and applying skills. And that's the passage. I don't have anything cute to pull from, okay? And I really wanted to do bibliomancy, and not just because Opal Oracle is doing it this month, but because I wanted to do it before. But I'm like, I don't really have any books to do it with. And so I found this old world geography book that I have from middle school, I think. I don't know how I ended up with this. I can't remember. I think I missed the day that we were supposed to turn them in. And I forgot it in my book bag or something. And it just never got turned in, and I didn't get charged for it. And I think they might have actually switched the books after this year anyway. So I just have it. Anyway, let's get into this. How long has it been? I don't know. So, critical thinking and applying skills when it comes to the throat portal. That's what all of this is going to be about. And that's what I talked about too. It really blew my mind that people thought I was rich. And I think some people still do. I don't know if it's like the air that I have about me. I don't know if it's all the Taurus I got in my chart. I don't know. Some people really do think I got it like that, and it's not that I won't. And again, it's like spiritually, yes. I guess I will say, like I said, I may not necessarily have everything already amassed to the point where I can just immediately come out of pocket like that. Like, I'm not going out and buying a yacht today or even a Lamborghini. But like I said, it's like, especially when I'm aware and tapped into the realm of things that I want, and when I pay attention to the news and when they release and when pre-orders go live, it's like I manifest, or I'm good at finding the opportunities to get it. And so I guess, like I said, spiritually, yeah. Physically, no, but maybe that's the point, right? Because in a way, it doesn't matter if you already have the resources or if you have the resources by the time what you want comes out. If you get it on day one, then doesn't that work? It's like, I feel like according to the semantics of it, it's like no, right? Because I feel like rich means that you already have it. You just got, I don't know, gold bars and a pool of gold coins that you can just jump into and swim in whenever you want. But rich in spirit, getting the opportunities to get what you want, I never thought about it like that. So in a way, then I guess yeah. I don't know. That's interesting, and I'll take both. Okay, so the throat portal, number 40. Like I said, y'all, if this is your first time seeing me, we just go with the flow over here. That's why some of the videos are several hours long, and I tried to timestamp when I actually start. So I'm actually, well, let me look at the time. Let's see, how long I've been on here. Oh, 23 minutes. Okay, yeah, I am going to timestamp that. I'm going to say 23:30, so I'll remember later if I can. That is not what I wanted. And now we're going to say 23:45. 2, 3, 4, 5. Wow, look at that. Synchronicities. Okay. So the throat portal is... This image is connected with the Tanzanite blue color ray. The Tanzanite blue color ray. Is Tanzanite one of the companion crystals? It isn't. Interesting. Okay. So, throat portal, the celestial interpretation here is being the truth of who you are and deeply integrating empowerment into your soul will enliven and honor your true purpose. Love that. Understanding your power of verbal communication and learning the balance between your willpower and your soul power in this exterior world is an exercise in balance. Always speak from your deepest truth. That was really deep, and I like that. The oracle interpretation is, if I can get this in a little bit more comfortable, here we go. Oh, y'all can see how close I gotta be. Oh, well, it's fine. Are you feeling suppressed? Do not be afraid to speak up right now. It will be all. It will always be best for you. Hold up, because it will be always be. It will always be best for your highest good to speak your truth. However, if you have been too outspoken, it might be time to allow someone else the chance to speak. All in proper balance and harmony. It's now time to acknowledge where your words originate from. Is it your mind, heart, body, or from the divine? Know where you are speaking from at all times. Your deepest truth is in this awareness. The companion crystals here are blue lace agate and turquoise. The companion essential oil is peppermint, and I think I'm going to have that peppermint tea today. It's a mint tea. What's the difference between mint and peppermint, y'all? Somebody let me know. Because it's actually a mint tea. And I know that they have a mint essential oil, so mint is different than peppermint. I want some peppermints now. My grandma used to, like, in her purse or in her bag, because it was always a bag, girl. My grandma's she has a bag. She doesn't have a purse. She has a bag. But she always had a bag of mints in her bag. And even at my church, she's like the head usher type lady. Not really the head usher, but kinda. Sorta. And my grandmother being a head usher is very much so within the maternal line that I've fallen into as, I guess, my mother's prime homosexual sign. I don't know. It was like my grandma does it, my mom does it, and I do it. I primarily do it because my mom makes me help her do it, and also because I just gravitate towards my grandmother whenever I'm like at church or in a space. And so I'm always helping my grandma or I'm always with my mom. And so it just kind of sort of found its way in me, I guess. But there's also this thing of like stewardship to others, I guess, that I really noticed. It was like last January, when I went to a funeral for my cousin. And that was at the beginning of like my awakening. And for whatever moment, I was just sitting there and observing my mother and my grandmother. And even though they were also hurting, it's like we're attending this funeral and they're still like playing that usher type role. They're still being there for other people, even though they're hurting. And I feel like there's this generational tendency, I'll call it, to put others before ourselves and to play that role of servitude, and not servitude, but like stewardship. I like stewardship better than servitude. But honestly, it's like if you're sacrificing your own well-being to the point where, like, if you're extending to the point where you can't even give to yourself when you need it, you know? And that came out yesterday, specifically here. That came out yesterday with the heart portal, with generosity. It was that energy of being overly generous and not giving to yourself. And so I guess when it came to speaking your truth, it was like, or have you been too outspoken lately? It may be time to listen to someone else. And I think listening isn't something that we attribute with the throat chakra. So that's interesting. And I guess if we look at the throat chakra from a space of conversation, conversation is a twofold process. It involves speaking and listening. Speaking and listening into the ear, right? Like a telephone. And then the telephone connects both the ear and the throat. Hello, hi. Now we got FaceTime, where it connects the eyes to the ears and the throat. FaceTime, video calls, stuff like that. And so I guess there's this evolution of communication, but there's also this multifaceted there's a multifaceted nature to communication that I feel like may not necessarily be the focus when we look at speaking our own truth. And I guess too at the same time, it's like if you're a gentler soul, or if you're a soul that's more observant, then part of your truth is listening. But you also need to know when to speak. I don't know. So I love this. Love this. And we're gonna start over here. So this was I looked for the Queen of Swords. Speak your truth. Duh. Hello? So lesser oops, okay, let me not pull that up. Lesser aligned speaking your truth. We have the Strength card and the Seven of Coins. The Seven of Coins in this deck, we have one seed, two roses, two crystals, and two root systems that culminate in this sort of oh, it's a tooth. There's a tooth up there. Have I ever seen that tooth? There's a third eye and a tooth. And then there's this crystal here with all of these lines sort of around it. And then there's this crescent moon that's capped. And then we also have the Strength card. So what's interesting here is the tooth and the third eye are two symbols besides the crystal and this crescent moon. The tooth and the third eye are two symbols outside of a coin. So there's nothing encapsulating this wisdom. But this, because it's like this octahedral sort of shape, because there are 8 sides, right? But the 8th one, the top point is empty, but we have that tooth in there. But again, the tooth isn't in a coin. Let's see if I can get y'all to see this now. There you go. Kind of. There we go. So, let's see, girl. We'll try. There we gotta get our angles. There we go. So you can see all these coins around this. But at the top, there's that tooth outside of a coin, and then we have that moon up there. But everything else is in these sort of coins on the sides. Oh. Everything else is in a coin. Everything else is mirrored. The only two things not mirrored, the things at the apex of this, and the top and the bottom of the shape, we have the coin containing the seed, and then we have the tooth. And I love it. So we have this new beginning in the seed that's in the coin, but the wisdom on the other side of this new beginning is not yet encircled. I think, and it is the 7 of coins. That's sort of what we're working towards. That's sort of what we're building towards. And the 8 of coins, the 8 of pentacles is typically an energy of mastery. It's an energy of attaining mastery. It's not really an energy of apprenticeship. I would say the 7 of coins is more of an energy of apprenticeship, where the 8 of coins is like after you finish your apprenticeship, but before you've built, like before you have your own name, before you establish a name for yourself, when you're still in the process of like building a customer base and putting in the quality, honing your crafts, before you really nail down what it is that you do. That's that 8 of coins. And then the 9 of coins could be the energy of you really at the moment of attaining that mastery, putting that cycle to a completion, the cycle of apprenticeship, adepthood, establishing yourself, and then mastery. And then with the 10, it's like from that place of mastery, like that's when like you're it. That's when you've made it, and people are traveling from all over the world to come and see you because of what you do. But this is the 7. So this is the card of apprenticeship. And there's something about this third eye looking at the tooth capped by this crescent moon, about looking at the wisdom behind your experiences, even if you can't see the experience in the fullness of what it is, right? And then we have the Strength card over here. And it's interesting that you see this upward crescent moon here, over here, but then in the Strength card, it's facing down. And it's a lot bigger, right? Let's see. There it is. And we have the sun and that up here. Let's see. We have the sun up here in there, and then we have the moon down there, and there's actually a star in the moon. With this, and this is speaking your truth, I think this is something that you're learning to do. I think with this tooth, see, there's something here about wisdom that it's not encapsulated. Um, Also, when I see it this way, the strength card upright, it's like this sun is impregnating the darkness with a light, and right now it's a star. And when it's in reverse, it's like the star is being born from the womb, falling out into this sun and becoming a sun, right? So there's something about this area where it is, the womb is an area of protection, but it's not a prison, but it limits you, right? It's not a cage, it's a vessel. It's a space that you're confined within. And so you can grow and grow, but you're still confined to the womb. You're not yet birthed out, not yet ready to be a star. And this is the energy of speaking your truth. So I feel like with that sort of, was that like a tick? Did y'all see that? Girl, I don't know. With this unencapsulated wisdom, there's something about the experience, because again, you're in this moment of apprenticeship right now. So there's something about the experiences in the past coming up to this moment that you haven't necessarily done. And so it's like you're looking at these previous situations again with exiled magical realms and transformation being the bottom three. We might as well fan these out because these are a whole story in themselves. With those being the bottom three, and you can still only see transformation really, so it's fine. It's like in the past you've learned that, okay, don't say this, don't do that, don't be too weird, I can't fit in here. And it's like how you grew in those spaces, how you accommodated to those spaces, and how that sort of kept you in this star in the womb of the night energy instead of you being the sun brilliance of all that you are. And it's something that, again, with the Seven of Pentacles being a farming energy, being a cultivation energy, it's something that you've grown accustomed to being. And so I feel like there's a very specific way that you speak, and there's a very, like, there are things that you do, there are things that you would never do. And the Seven of Pentacles, I feel like, again, since that is the apprentice energy, this is you like looking at how someone else grew this seed. And so you're not necessarily looking at how the climate has changed. You're not necessarily looking at how the nutrient load in the soil has changed. You're not even necessarily looking to see if you're even planting the same seeds. So it's like you're just planting random seeds, Googling how to grow a seed. And like you may be finding a seed that's not even yours. You may be finding seeds that grow in a climate that doesn't match, right? And that's what I talked about previously. Oh my gosh. Thank you for illuminating to me that I don't do this stuff for no reason. Because in the previous video, I opened up and I turned to, it was talking about the climate in the Midwest and how the winters are bitterly cold and the summers are long and hot. But if you live in an area that's more tropical, it's like you're gonna, like, the winters aren't gonna be as cold. The temperature is gonna be more, especially if you live along the equator. It's like a little bit more, it's not as extreme, and the climate is different. And so if you're growing a seed around the equator and you're growing a seed in Midwestern USA, right, you have to sort of keep those differences in mind. And also, like, the nutrient load, what's the soil like? The soil is going to be different. Maybe even the wildlife in the area, right, because that affects the soil in some ways, right, because they poop and they pee and they do other kinds of stuff. Also, if, like, depending on the area, if it's fungus heavy, then I think fungi, they also fix certain things into the soil when they break things down. And so there's this whole environment that's almost not being taken into consideration, that's keeping, it's like someone who's pregnant and like, but she's like keeping the baby in. It reminds me of that one episode of Bob's Burgers with the girl who was in labor, but she was freaked out about being a mom, and so she was like keeping her baby from coming out. And like the mind and the heart, emotional and mental stress and anxiety can do miracles to the body, and it can really wreck the body at the same time. And there's this sort of like perceived mental, emotional, whatever that is keeping this from happening. right? It's like this star is ready to be birthed out into the world as a son, but this woman isn't yet ready to be a mother. There's something about, it's like you can take the person out of the exile, but you can never take exile out of the person. And by that, it's like, in some ways, people who grow up outcasts kind of sort of always maybe feel that way. But the thing about creating and cultivating spaces that you can be yourself in, and that's something I talked about early in the last video. So maybe I could have left this all together, but go watch that if you want. Because either way, it's like you would have clicked here anyway, right? Maybe, maybe not. But the thing about cultivating and creating spaces, and again, going back to the solar plexus portal, maybe it was like, yeah, I think it was going back to that. It's like you have to give, or maybe it wasn't. No, I don't think it was, because I just titled it like allowing yourself. It's like allow the healing and grace for the opportunity or something like that. It's like you have to allow yourself these opportunities to prove to yourself who you are, right? And that's the thing that I was also talking about like when you're speaking your truth, when you're talking, you're also breathing in. And so when you speak from that space and when you breathe into that space, because you're speaking from that space, it fuels that fire and it allows you to be more and more and more of who you are. But a lot of times that's determined by how comfortable we feel in our environment. And yesterday at the heart, there was that space of like vulnerability and opening up. And maybe it wasn't yesterday, but it was receptivity and generosity and the need for balance between the two. Um, but this is about like, you also need to cultivate the spaces. And being vulnerable has something, it came up a while ago, maybe before one of the weekly releases, because I talked about, no, maybe even before that, because I remember talking about seeing a clip of Brene Brown and how she talking about vulnerability and what vulnerability isn't necessarily. Like vulnerability isn't necessarily oversharing, and I think some people overshare and they think that that's vulnerability, or not necessarily. But it's like there are some people. I feel like there could be an instance of someone who overshares, but they may not necessarily be vulnerable to you. Like me, I wouldn't say I necessarily overshare, but I can share a lot. But that's a lot of stuff I'm not vulnerable about. And again, it ain't about me. So there's this thing when it comes to speaking your truth about allowing yourself the space and creating the space and cultivating the spaces where you can speak that truth. Because here with the Seven of Pentacles, I feel like there's just very much this like, whenever I speak my truth, this happens. Whenever I do this, that happens. Well, it's like, okay, well, look at the environment at that point in that place and who you are and were, and now look at this new environment that you're in, right? You're not going to grow something tropical in a midwestern climate, probably. It may not grow, right? And vice versa. There are some plants that need a certain amount of shade. There are certain plants that need a certain amount of dryness, right? If we're talking about a cactus, if you overwater it, it's going to die, right? So if you take a desert plant into the middle of the rainforest, it may not survive, it may not thrive because it's too wet. And that's another thing, going all the way back to the dust storm that came from like sub-Saharan Africa or whatever. It was like the Amazon rainforest depends and relies on those dust storms because the dust has nutrients that, like the rainforest is so wet, all of the nutrients get washed out of the soil. Like nothing has the ability to really sink in and to stick because it rains so much, it all gets washed out. And maybe that speaks to these areas and these times where maybe you would try to be yourself and you would encounter resistance and opposition, and you would be sort of like derided is the word that's popped into my mind, but it's like you would be torn down, and it's like all of those tears that you would cry, it would wash out any of the benefit that you would get from actually being yourself. And so since all of that's been washed out through your tears and through heavy emotion, again, it's like you don't allow yourself that opportunity to get to know you and to speak your truth. And it's like this throat portal is very tied to the solar plexus, and I guess I've never seen it that way, but I feel like it is. They're very connected, and they sit on opposite sides of the heart, so I guess it also makes sense, right? Um, But then it's like not only that, but I feel like you also run the risk of associating you being you with something bad, with something negative, with something unlovable and unacceptable when that's not the case. But again, you have to allow yourself the opportunity to be open to those spaces, to speak in those spaces, and to be loved in those spaces. And that being love, again, with that tooth not being encircled in a coin, it's like that love is something that it's like it raises more questions than it answers. It's like, what's wrong with this person? What's wrong with this space where they would love me for this, or where they would ask for my truth, where they wouldn't sort of like it just causes this whole narrative that you have on the inside to crumble and fall apart. And that's another thing with the old or lesser aligned energy with the new aligned energy. It's like when we're shifting paradigms, when we're coming into higher spaces, there are a lot of old narratives that need to be questioned, right? Surviving and thriving in the past is going to be very different than surviving and thriving in the future, right? Like just comedy, right? Maybe you had a lot of sort of like race or disability based comedy and you were very successful in the past. But us coming into the time that we're coming into now, it's like comedy like that don't fly no more, right? It's like, why do we like, I feel like we can evolve to the point where we don't have to debase and make fun of other people to make a joke, to crack a joke, to have fun, to laugh, right? It's like there's enough good in the world that we don't have to trivialize, normalize, or make acceptable the bad, right? Like the world is bright enough. You can make it funny without going to something dark. Now, some people just have dark senses of humor, and for those people, I say like they're not for me, personally, because I just don't. And I talked about that, but this ain't about me, right? It ain't about me. It ain't about me. It's about the collective. Well, I'm part of the collective, aren't I? Like, nah, bruh. It ain't about you. Chill. And you're taking too long. Not taking too long, but you know, I feel like it's important. Okay. So that's what all this is over here. And again, like I said, it's about how we've adapted to this space in the past and how we need to change in order to thrive in the future. So coming over here to a more aligned speaking your truth, we have I saw these cards, but I didn't even put it together because the whole thing didn't come to me. Oh my gosh, look at this. Okay, well, look at it with me, okay? It's I think and another thing that sort of comes out with the more aligned energy versus the less aligned is honestly, it's like if I could put a court card to the more aligned energy, to the less aligned energy, I feel like the less aligned energy would be kings and queens because we're so firmly rooted in it and because it worked in the past. And honestly, a lot of times it feels like the more aligned energy is a page. Maybe sometimes a knight, but a lot of times it feels like a page because it's newer. And a lot of times when it comes out, it speaks more to the transition or to the energy that we need to be in to come out of the old and to brace ourselves and prepare ourselves for the new. And I only say that because I have the star right here, right? And we have this third eye that is looking at the star. We have something that can perceive the star. And since the third eye is looking at the star, we know it's not in the womb, right? We're not doing a sort of what do you call it? What is it? Ultrasonic sonogram. We're not doing a sonogram when we're looking at the baby in the belly. It's like with the star card, it's out. It's full out, right? The star with that eye looking up at the star. I love that. I love that. And I think it's with the devil. Yeah, we have the star and the devil. Between the star and the devil is the tower. And it's like I feel like we're in this tower moment now. And either the tower moment is caused by this like four of cups energy of us not accepting what it is that we actually want, right? It's like with the star being in the shadow of the moon, it's like there are things that we don't even dare hope for or dream for that we want. It's like we see the sun and the moon, but we don't see the stars in the sky. There's an energy of like light pollution, right? There's too much that we're being distracted by on the outside to see the truth of like what's actually up there. Also, when you're looking at the sky nowadays, you got to worry about, is that a star? Is it a satellite? Is that a piece of old space junk that's just floating up there in the sky that is just happen to catch some sunlight and like beam it back down? Is it a mobile satellite that's like currently up there moving, or is it a star? It's like there are all these questions now that we have to ask ourselves that maybe we didn't have to ask ourselves in the past. And it's not to shy away from rediscovering who you are. And speaking your truth is one of the quickest ways for you to get to know who you are. Now, I feel like there are some people, this isn't just about speaking, it's speaking your truth, right? And that's why I was like, I'm talking a lot today, but we're in the energy of the throat, so it's fine, right? Because we're supposed to talk. It's not just talking, it's speaking your truth, right? I feel like there are a lot of people that say a lot of things. There are people who say things that they don't even believe because they're the type of person who they get some kind of fulfillment or satisfaction from attention and anything for attention. And so if they're not filling their attention quota, they'll say something shocking, jarring, and appalling to get more attention, right? It's very much that like no press is bad press type of energy, right? As long as you're talking about me, then I win. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. And that's not necessarily speaking their truth, right? Because a lot of times when people seek attention, it's to cover up for something. Maybe for something that they didn't receive as a child, right? Maybe as a child they didn't receive a lot of positive attention, or they didn't feel a lot of positive attention and they didn't feel loved in that attention. And it's like just like when you have a kid that isn't getting enough attention, they sort of act out to get that attention. It's very much so that energy. But with that Seven of Pentacles on the other side, it's like something that you've grown up with, something that is now ingrained in you, right? Everything was encapsulated except for that tooth. And so maybe I was looking at it one way, but maybe it's the case that since the. Okay, yeah, 1 second, we'll come back to this. Since the tooth is the closest thing to this moon, it would be the star. They're in the same place. The star and the tooth are both sitting right under this moon. If you can see it. Yeah, there you go. You can kind of see it. Well, here was the sun, the star in there, and then the tooth. There you go. The tooth under the moon. There you go. So it could be the case that once you take once you take into consideration the difference in the environment and the climate and where the seed, like, and what's favorable for the seed, then it's like all of these other things that have been withheld in these bubbles, all of the love and the roses, the new beginnings in the seed, the community and the open communication with the roots, and the abundance in the crystals. Once you get the experience, once you get the knowledge from these experiences, it's like it pops all of these bubbles. And once the bubbles are popped, you can experience it. So yeah, the coins in encapsulating this, they're actually in some ways keeping you from experiencing it. It's like little bits of happiness that are locked behind certain mental rooms in our mansion of life experiences. And they're like in the corridor of like that we don't go down because that's the corridor of authenticity and the corridor of the soul and the corridor of the self and the wing of truth of this building, right? All these corridors full of these rooms and doors that we don't go down in the wing of truth because like we shut the whole wing down because people say they hear weird things over there, right? At night they hear moans and sobs and cries and no one's there. So we shut the whole thing down. But when you open yourself up to it, and I think that's why the star is coming up here with the devil, it's like it's healing everything that was. Well, it's, oh wait, yeah, oops, okay, we can kind of start to see that. All right, all right. I didn't show y'all the devil card. It's right there. You can kind of see it, right? It's healing all of that stuff that's been hurt. And again, between the devil and the star is the tower, and the tower is where we're sitting now. Either we're going to evacuate the tower, we're going to rebuild the tower, or we're just going to live in this. I think the tower's already fallen, honestly. And now is the time to fix it, but you can't fix what you can't speak. And so it's like some people are living in this dilapidated, condemned building that used to be this tower, but. And it's like the thing about this building is like it was never great in the first place, but it became home. But this energy, it's like it's restoring, it's renovating that tower. And it's taking the power away from that devil energy. And what's interesting is the devil is a skull with these Capricorn horns, ram horns, or whatever. And it's not necessarily in its mouth, but there's this huge upwards pointing triangle. Well, two things. There's this huge upwards pointing triangle, and then there's this little downwards pointing triangle. Right? Upwards pointing fire, masculine, downwards pointing water, feminine. And it's like they intersection in the teeth. They intersect in the teeth of this devil energy. So it's like biting them. But what this is so weird, and I've never felt devil energy like this. But what's interesting, it's like the teeth. It's actually keeping. It feels like it's keeping these things separate, but it's actually like it's and that like the men and the women are often tied together, right? Chained together. But it's like this devil energy is keeping the masculine and the feminine as neighbors. And a lot of times when we go through it, we feel it as it's like keeping us separate or something like that. But oh my gosh, I've never looked at the shadow that way. But it's like the shadow holds all of the truth that we don't dare to speak. But it's always right there. And so I'm not saying that devil energy is good, but it's like something about this energy keeps that truth even when we can't embody it for ourselves. It's like it keeps it right there behind us. And that's another thing with this strength card, right? And then we see the tip of the masculine triangle. And it's also interesting because the moon is in this upwards pointing triangle and the sun is in this downwards pointing triangle. I think the first time I saw this, it was actually in reverse, this strength card. And I was like, oh, the sun is in this upward pointing triangle. But upright, there's a light in the dark and the dark in the light. And the point of the solar triangle is dark in the moon, right? You see how it goes like dark right there? The tip, well, yeah, there you see the tip of that triangle. It goes dark in there. So it's always right there. And so there's this energy of not misattribution fully, but it's like we vilify and demonize the devil energy and the shadow in particular. But it's like the truth is right there. The truth that we can't speak. And I think that's what this sort of star energy is. It's like it's turning the light on to let the shadow know that we're ready to integrate it. And when we integrate the shadow, and when we take, it's like when this moon gives the star back to the light. When, like, the only way to get that star is to integrate the dark and the light. That's when we get the pieces of the truth that we don't yet have. Right? It's like you can be vibrant. It's like very much so the energy of people who are like comedians or entertainers, but they're also depressed. And so they have this great darkness inside of them, while on the surface they are externalizing all of this light. And so it's like there's this truth of who you are that lies in the darkness that you will never find unless you come to that space of integration. And that's been another message, and that's been, it's like it's everything, right? Integrating, and we just had the heart, which is kind of sort of about integration because it both receives and transmits. And that's actually something I thought about in the shower, because I was going back to, like, I should know, like, the four ventricles or whatever of the heart, the four different parts of the heart, the four chambers of the heart or whatever. But it's like you got your in and out self-love chamber, and then you got your in and out external love chambers, right? And then within the heart itself, maybe they interact with each other, but from the outside, it's like these come in, those go out. It's kind of sort of black boxed, right? In engineering, we black box a lot of things to simplify the problem, right? The black box is like, this is what we're interested in, and we look at what comes into the black box, and we look at what goes out of the black box. And we can make assumptions about what happens in the black box by looking at what comes in and what goes out and the rates at which they do that. But there's something about, like, we need to unpack what's in these black boxes. And that happens on the inside. That happens internally. This has been a long time for Just Speak Your Truth. But again, I'm not going to limit the time. And like I said, it's like a lot of times it feels like this more aligned energy is a page. Because, like, this is the star. It's not a sun. But I think that's the important balance that the book talked about as well, right? There's a balance between speaking and listening. And so maybe it's a good thing that it's not a sun, because this isn't the solar plexus, right? And when you speak your truth, you speak your truth into a world, into an environment where others exist with their own truths. And it isn't necessarily to put your truth to the point where it outshines everyone else, but it's to speak your truth to the point where it gets you in alignment with you, so you shine in a way, right? Because it's like your truth can be different, but you can still shine in a way that's similar to other people, right? Just like if you believe something different, but because of your system of beliefs, it gets you to act in a way of compassion and kindness, right? And then someone else has a different code of beliefs, but it gets them to act in a way of compassion and kindness. And you're like, wow, you're the nicest person I've ever met. Like, do you also believe X, Y, and Z? And you're like, no, I don't. But, I don't need to discredit that either. Because X, Y, Z, A, B, C, E, F, G, right? H, I, J, M, N, O. As long as it's like, if this person has only experienced X, Y, Z, and so now they encounter you, and you embody something that speaks to what they experienced with XYZ, then it's like, are you also XYZ? It's like, no, I'm ABC, right? Sometimes, like, depending on the mood I'm in, they'll be like, Rio, on my Legacy channel, whenever I pop into a space, they'll be like, Rio, what's your sign? And even Shonda Rhimes, and it's interesting, I don't want to say, like, even Shonda Rhimes, but even Shonda Rhimes, who's like, I call her an astrologer. I think she would call herself an astrologer, and someone who's had experience with all of the signs. It's like sometimes she can't even peg my energy because I be all over the place, honestly. I can, like, that's, they say Pisces is all the signs, but I'm a Pisces with all of the signs except for Virgo in my chart. And what's interesting is, I don't know what it means, but in the elements of air and fire, I have these sextiles all over my chart. So there's like this big old, what is it? A hexagon, I guess? Because that would be 6 elements in my chart. And then there's also these sextiles between water and earth, but it's broken at Virgo because I don't have anything in Virgo. So I got all these sextiles around my chart, and it's around the in air. It's between 13 and 23, which is kind of sort of big, but it's like 13, 17 to 19, and then 23. But in fire, it's all like 17, 18. It may actually be 17 then. It's either like 17, 18 in fire or 16, 17 in fire. Like in fire, it's really tight. In air, it's a little looser, but they trine each other. Or they sextile each other. I don't know why I'm talking about myself again. What am I talking about? Why am I talking about me? Why am I talking about me? Why am I talking about my energy and being in it? Because I was talking about, I don't know. Oh, because I was talking about how some people like, oh, are you an XYZ? Are you an ABC? I'm like, no, girl. I'm a FOP. FOP. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where that was going. I don't know where that was going. But it's like I can be these things that aren't even necessarily congruent in the alphabet. And that's the thing about not necessarily needing to overshine something else or someone else with this star energy. So I think this is actually aligned. At first I was assuming it should be more of a sun, but I think it's actually perfect at the star because it keeps it in balance, right? And if you align more with that truth, then you may be in the solar system of that star. And then it would be the sun for you, but it can be the star for somebody else. And just because you're not a sun for somebody else doesn't diminish the fact that you're a luminous body in the sky, that you have your own light to shine in the world. So now coming over here, finally moving forward in the space of courage, and we looked for the strength card. So the strength card actually came out in this. So I think, and again, this is interesting for lesser aligned, throat portal, because like I said earlier, I think some people think that like if they talk a lot or if they're very blunt or if they're very loud, then that's them speaking their truth. And again, there's a difference between speaking and speaking your truth. And you can speak a lot, you can talk a lot. There's a difference between talking and speaking your truth, I guess is what I should say. And I think that's why we sort of have this strength bridge. It's like there's this misconception between speaking your truth and courage that if I'm loud, if I'm offensive, if I'm rude, if I'm blunt, if my words cut people, then that's just me speaking my truth with all the neck rolls and everything else, right? But that's not necessarily the case. But if you make that your truth, and if you live that like it's your truth when it's not your truth, you can see how far it pulls you from that space of your truth. And then you may have this even bigger sort of identity crisis because you're like, wow, I thought I was speaking my truth. I thought I was doing this. I thought I was doing that. And it's like, no, you're being rude. You're being obnoxious. You're being nasty. And again, with outdated comedy, it's not funny anymore, right? People are actually being hurt and dying and being killed, and because this is your brand of humor, because this is your brand of comedy, for some reason in some people's minds they can't understand that, hey, like just because this is a joke doesn't mean I should actually go out and offend or harass these people, right? Like me threatening people in real life is not funny. And I think that's one of the things that people kind of sort of like don't fully comprehend and understand, how the normalization of those brands of comedy and that humor also normalizes the violence and the stereotyping and the oppression and everything else, all of the negative experiences that people associated with those groups experience. And if you think about it, it's kind of sort of not twisted, but it's like even if you make fun of somebody, like to get to the point where there's like physical action taken against them or that their livelihood is threatened in some way, and to not, for like the humor to like offset the impact of stuff like that, it kind of blows my mind. But it's one of those things that I've accepted as like, hey, this is what people do, or this is how the human mind tends to work. Because I guess when it's a joke, you don't take it seriously, even if it is real life. In real life, it's still a joke. And I guess that's very much on this side of the energy, right? There's a difference between talking and speaking your truth. And in some ways, the things that you speak become a truth. And so there's a caution over here that goes along with this. Right? And it may not necessarily be the truth. It could be the darkness in the sky around the star, right? The star in the void. And it's like there are some stars that are literally right there. But it's like all of the stars are in the sky. But if there's too much light pollution, you just don't see it. It doesn't keep the star from being in the sky because you can't see it. There's too much distraction in the environment. It distorts things. It hides things, literally in plain sight. But it's not in plain sight because of everything around it. We have the Conqueror of Swords and the Sovereign of Swords. The Queen of Swords and the Knight of Swords energies here. When it comes to courage. This is all air, girl. This is all air and ain't no truth. And it's stale, right? This is stale. There's nothing new here. Like, there's no Ace of Swords. There's no Page of Swords. There's no even, maybe even like a Four of Swords, right? Because after the heartbreak comes the Four of Swords, which sort of puts the Three of Swords into perspective, I guess. So you may be able to take a new approach after that 3. But this is what I'm talking when I'm talking about Kings and Queens 1.0 as compared to Pages 2.0. It's this energy. This is prime example. This is like, oh well, it used to be funny. The world is too PC and blah blah blah. Like my freedom of speech is being limited, and it's very egoic. It's very nasty. It's very stuck. It's very stagnant, and it's very uncaring. And I guess that's why we got the Queen of Swords and the Knight of Swords. Is there any water over here? Let's see really quick. We had coins. We got strength, which is fire. Swords and swords. And then we end with... Yeah, there's some water here. Okay. Ooh, girl. Oh, girl. Ooh, girl. Okay. We get a little bit of we get a little bit of water at the end, but to this point, there's no water. Yeah, the Queen of Swords, and I feel like with the Queen of Swords and the Conqueror of Swords, it is that energy. It's the energy of the person who thrives on attention, and for whatever reason, they particularly enjoy negative attention because they get more of a response and a reaction out of people. This is someone who's being purposefully offensive with that Knight of Swords and the Queen of Swords. It's like this Queen of Swords in reverse type energy backed by a Knight of Swords. So not only is she going to cut you because she's insecure about something in herself or trying to overcompensate, but she's actively looking for people to attack with that Conqueror of Swords. That's someone who is very much so not satisfied within themselves. Because if this queen was satisfied within herself, she wouldn't be in this Knight of Swords energy without cause, right? It's like, don't you have a queendom to run? Don't you have other things to worry about? Don't you have better things to do with your time and energy and mental ability? Because I feel like this energy is very, like, it's very keen. And it's very astute and it's very aware. Let me define the word astute. Hey Siri, define astute. Really? Hey Siri, define astute, please. Siri, like, I'm all the way over here, boy. I can't hear you. Hey Siri, define astute, please.
The substance or essence of a speech or text.
What?
Do you want to hear the remaining one?
Gist? I said astute. How did Siri get gist? Hey Siri, define astute, please. Girl, define astute.
Astute means having or showing an ability to accurately assess situations or people and turn this to one's advantage.
Exactly. I didn't know about the advantage point, but it's very, very astute. But it's astute with in a negative way. It's like it will look at you, it will know what offends you, what upsets you, and that's what it will do to get that attention. So there's a difference here. And honestly, it's like this energy is what it is because it doesn't have the courage to face itself. You don't have the courage to face yourself or to speak what actually ails you. This energy doesn't have the courage to say, I am hurting, I am needing attention, I need someone to listen to me. I need to be listened to. I'm hurting and I need someone to care that I'm hurting. Instead of doing all that, instead of having the courage to do that, it'll have the courage to say the things that we're all thinking. It'll have the courage to offend people. Girl, like all of that is BS and ain't none of that strength. Ain't none of that strong. What's strong about that? What's courageous about that? For the people who hide their bigotry and their hatred, maybe it is courageous, right? For the people who will keep their whatever in their closet that honestly in the past 4 years has just been flying all over the place. It's like, yeah, it's courageous. It's courageous that you can be upfront with your bigotry and your hatred while I hide mine in shame. It's like, okay, like I said, there are some things that are good and there are things that are bad, right? And just because it is in response to something else doesn't necessarily mean it's less bad, but maybe there is justification for it, right? That's why a punishment is a punishment. Even if it's like your karmic just desserts, right? Even if it's what you deserve, when it's something that you deserve, it's bad on with intention. It's intentionally bad as a consequence to something that you did, right? It's not good. It's like we're not giving you something good because you did something bad. We're giving you something bad in response to something bad that you did, and on a context outside of you and that situation, other people may perceive it as good that you received something bad because you did something bad. Right? Now that we're entering the space of contradiction, it's like we can accept that there is good and bad, and we can accept that it's subjective sometimes, and we can accept that it's objective in the subjectivity of it, or whatever. Yeah, and like that, those are some things that are objectively like they're pretty bad, right? Tearing someone else down, belittling someone else, attacking someone else. In what situation is that good, right? You could say, "Oh, this person deserved it," but if something bad happens to someone who deserves it, you can admit that it's something bad happening to someone who you deem as bad, and you call it good because it's bad happening to bad. But you can still that's bad, right? I think sometimes when we come into these unity consciousness and blurring the line spaces, it's like when we're trying to come out of duality or polarity or whatever, I feel like there's this tendency to be like, there is no this and there is no that. And it's like, yes, there is this and there is that. And in this world of choice, in this world of because of choice consequence, in this world of like duality, not even necessarily polarity where it has to be extreme, but in a world of duality where we have the sun, we have periods of sunlight, and then we have periods where the sun ain't out and we get a moon, sometimes if we can see it, right? Like saying that there's no duality is saying that it's always day, like it's neither daytime nor nighttime outside. It's neither winter nor spring. It's neither hot nor cold. It's like all of that. It's like, yes, we live in a world of cycles. We live in a world of seasons, and we live in a world where they have these in betweens and contradiction arises. We don't need to strip. It's like when people say like time is an illusion. It's like, yes, it is, but the way that we experience it is linear and therefore not an illusion. Cycles. We measure time in cycles, even if we don't have clocks, right? A few months from now, it's going to start getting cold and the leaves are going to start falling off of the tree, right? The way we measure time may be whatever, but there are other things that measure time outside the way that we measure it. Anyway, all I'm saying is contradiction is real, and this energy ain't that great. And this energy, it's like it's praised for courageous, and it's praised as this. It's like you get positive attention from the bigots, and then you get negative attention from, I don't want to say the decent common folk, or the decent folk with common decency. But it's like you get both good and bad in that. And that's what this it's like this nasty toxic feeds itself type of energy. And this doesn't even have to necessarily be sort of like hate speech and bigotry and stuff like that. This could be you running a narrative of how like if people really knew me, then they wouldn't like me, so I pretend to be this, right? And so you're pretending and you're acting and you're attracting more and more people. It's like it's these things that reinforce the same narrative over and over and over and over and over again when it runs counterintuitive to what is actually to where we're going as a collective, where we want to go, or what is needed in the situation, right? That's what this is, and it feeds itself. It sustains itself. I feel like these are separate. These are separate. This is its own little thing up there, and then we got this down here. So coming over here to more aligned courage, we have the Ruler of Swords and the Five of Wands. I actually like this, and y'all probably can't see these. Can y'all see them up here? Can you see them up there? The Ruler of Swords and the Five. We got the Queen and the Knight over here, and we got the King over here with the Five of Wands. And I feel like the king with courage, it's courageous to call crap like this out, right? What's actually courageous is to, it's like, I feel like a lot of times, especially when it comes to certain things, it depends on, I guess, the system that you're trying to uphold, right? If you're saying negative, nasty things, targeting people that have been targeted already for that, it's like these people have a history of being targeted, and you think you're being bold and courageous by saying the things that have literally been said to them all this time. Where we're trying to come into a place of, hey, let's respect each other and honor the differences amongst each other and come together cohesively and coexist. You think you're being courageous by, continuing to promote the old garbage that we're trying to come out of. And it's like, that's not necessarily, it's not necessarily the case. And I know I'm speaking very strongly right now, but I also feel like I'm not, it's not me, and it's not my soul, and it's not my path, and it's not my job to try to placate these old energies and be like, well, there's no good and there's no bad, it's just it's like, no, that's old space, that's 3D, and we're trying to come out of it. In order for us to be more harmonious, in order for us to get to unity consciousness, where we can all be one and blah, blah, blah. And I think that's one of the aspects of unity consciousness that a lot of people don't really speak to. In a way, maybe that's why unity consciousness rubs me the wrong way. Because I feel like a lot of times in some spaces, I'm like, you're not looking at the right thing. You're not focusing on the right thing. Unity consciousness is we're all one. We're all created in the image of God. We're all sparks of this divine consciousness down here, and that's it, right? I'm not you, you're not me, I'm not the cat down the road, I'm not the frog sitting outside my window waiting for a kiss to become a prince, right? I am me, you are you, we are both parts of it, but we are not each other. I'm not my brother, I'm not my sister. We got the same parents. We're both our combinations of our parents, but with different alchemy to different degrees. I'm not, like I said, I'm not my brother. I'm not my sister. I'm not my cousins. Even if we got the same grandparents, right? I am me. You are you. And unity is about acknowledging that we are both a part of it, but we are not each other. And we need to respect each other and honor each other as these separate embodiments of it, without reducing ourselves to being the same. It's like, girl, anyway. What are these even? The Ruler of Swords and the Five of Wands. When it comes to courage, I feel like with the Five of Wands and the Ruler of Swords, that's having the courage to break these old systems and these old paradigms that don't necessarily work. When you're combated with energy that will see that energy, when you're combated with people and energy that will see those paradigms continue ad infinitum because they benefit from it. Or like I saw somebody, she said that one of the dudes that she projected in high school ended up like leading some kind of sort of white supremacist group, and by the time they caught him, it looked like he was preparing to do something that shouldn't be done. And then some people are like, well, the dude is like, he's like Hispanic or Latino or something, like he's not even white. There are minorities, girl, and people who aren't white who are white supremacists. It's one of the odd and sad truths of reality, right? There are Uncle Ruckuses out there. And again, there are things within themselves that they can't accept because they fall in, I don't want to say they fall in prey, they fall in victim, because at the same time, when you don't have, like I said yesterday or the day before, when I was talking about the dream I had with the people in the shadows, when you don't have your own shadow, when you don't own your own shadow, you leave yourself open to picking up any random shadow. And you not having your shadow as being at this place in this space where you can't fully accept and love yourself. And when you don't fully accept and love yourself, if there are things that you hate about yourself, he was like, she said he was like some creepy dude who got rejected by a lot of girls. And there are dudes out there like that. It's like, I feel like, well, yeah, I've been rejected a lot. I had to think about that because I was like, well, I don't even know if I necessarily like too many people to the point where I'm like, hey, I like you. But again, I guess I'm not that type of person. And it ain't about me. Why do I keep trying to make this about me, guys? I can be an example sometimes, though. It's like there are people who get rejected a lot who don't, like, try to, like, kill people. You know? There are people who don't fit in who don't try to kill people. But when, again, we're so focused on what we don't get from the outside, and when we don't give it to ourselves, and when we don't create spaces where we are welcome. Like, I have a friend who was like, I don't want to go home because I was bullied and teased by all the popular kids. And I was like, then why did you try so hard to fit in with them if you knew that they always picked on you? Like, I was your friend. Why didn't you, I don't know, spend more time with me? Instead of trying to, like, go to these places when you're not welcomed and accepted. You're setting yourself up for this. But, again, like I said, down here with the Conqueror and the Queen of Swords, it comes this time when you're just perpetuating, you're actively, consciously or not, you're actively seeking environments and situations that will reinforce the narrative and the story that you're already telling yourself about who you are. And there's nothing courageous about that, right? Courage comes from the heart, from the French word coeur, or however you pronounce it, as the card from Lord Ganesha. I've read it so many times. Courage happens in these Five of Wands moments. In these moments where there is change to be made, in these moments of uncertainty, in these moments where there is fear and worry and anxiety, that's where courage happens. And you can say, oh, Patrick, but there's fear and worry and anxiety for the bigots who hide their bigotry. And it's like, yeah, sure, because, for a minute there, it seemed like we were trying to make some progress. But I feel like that was also a really, really, really good example of, even though there are a lot of things going on with that whole situation behind the scenes, I'm sure, and no one is perfect, and people were still committing all kinds of atrocities around the world. It's like, even when we had that, I feel like the Obama presidency was a prime example. I feel like a lot of people knew, especially minorities, and maybe if we knew it, we kind of sort of manifested it in some way. Yeah, sure, whatever. But I feel like that was a prime example that we can't force change onto someone, right? We can't write into law. We should, but we can't only write into law and legislation that, we're protecting these groups and we're protecting those groups, because, like, race is a protected group sometimes, and there's still race-based hate crimes, right? Now, because of the Supreme Court decision, I think we're incorporating, like, sexual orientation and gender identity also into that. So especially when it comes to the workplace, they said that you can't fire someone because it sort of falls under gender discrimination. So we already had gender and race and some other stuff in, like, Title IX and other things. But it's like, that doesn't protect people from experiencing, like, prejudice, right? And I think that was a perfect, and that's why, like, the world can't just change. That's why, these things aren't just going to go away. That's why it's not just going to solve itself. Because there are things that we consciously have to do to get that to be the case. You can't just force change on someone and expect somebody to be fine with it. Like, I'm sure there's been a moment in time in your life where some kind of change was forced upon you, and how did you take that? Were you like, oh, gee, thanks, right? It's like, no. And I think that's what this courage is. I think this is a courage to really break chains. Honestly, this Knight of Swords, I don't know if any of y'all have ever seen. I won't even say the title of the movie because I don't want to spoil it. But there's this one movie with a matriarch figure, and the matriarch figure had multiple sons. And there was one son who was loved by the people, and there was another son who was not loved by the people. And the son that wasn't loved by the people was the favorite of the king type energy. And the king type energy wanted this son to take the throne because he can manipulate this son in a way that he didn't have the ear of the queen. And the queen is the one who ran the whole show. And so basically, like the other son was loved by the people. And girl, oh, there was this strong female character in that movie that I loved. And it's perfect that it's coming up with the throat portal. Okay, thank you. There was this strong female character in that movie that I loved. But because I knew that the world is the way it is, and because I knew the fragile ego of man, and what he does to strong women, toxic masculinity, what toxic masculinity does to strong women, it can appreciate them in a way that, healthy masculinity can or will. I was like, you speak too strongly. You're too courageous. You're too bold. I'm like, girl, I love you, but girl, shh, shh, shh. I was like, it's a movie I was watching, right? In real life, it's like, I'm not the type of person to tell somebody to shush. Especially because, like, nothing that she said was wrong. And she was not gonna let nobody tell her any otherwise. She wasn't wrong. She was in her power, but she was too strong for the fragility of the ego. And so she suffered, unfortunately. And basically, at the end of the movie, with the Queen of Swords and the Knight of Swords, the Queen was able to be convinced by this Knight of Swords type energy. And the Knight of Swords had this queen living so far deep in the realm of his own narrative and his own story that she had her son killed. So what happened was he was exiled, right? He ended up being exiled because he ended up marrying the strong lead character. I guess not a lead character. He ended up marrying the strong woman. And the strong woman wasn't wrong. And the strong woman defended herself. And he defended the woman defending herself. But it was a prominent political figure that she defended herself against. And this Knight of Swords energy used that situation, took that situation out of context. Someone, like, regardless of how the prominence of this political figure, the wife of one of the princes, maybe the crown prince, I don't know what the difference between a crown prince and a prince is. Maybe a crown prince is the one, like, currently in line to get the throne, but then he would be the crown prince. The wife of the crown prince was assaulted. And she defended herself. But since it was like a dude that did it, see what she ended up like, she cut off this dude's hand because he used that hand to assault her, essentially. And so she cut it off. And so the dude, he didn't even know about it, right? And so they hold a trial, and the Queen of Swords is there, and the Knight of Swords is there, and then the other son that nobody likes is there. And he's like, so then there's a trial or whatever, right? I think she was put on trial. And he was like, it was something, it was more dramatic when he said it. But he was like, you cut off his hand when you should have cut off his head. And he cut the dude's head off. And nobody was expecting it. And like, that's that, I would say that's like that more aligned masculine energy that stands with feminine energy instead of needing feminine energy to be subservient and below it. I saw somebody on Facebook, one of my cousins shared on Facebook, some dude, it was a tweet of some dude like, "Where is my future wife? Like, I want my rib back," or whatever, because you know in Adam and Eve, God created Eve from the rib of Adam. And it's like, girl, I don't know if it's because I have a strong female mother. I mean, there are people in my situation and people with my background that still don't. So maybe it's just me at this point. But it's like, he was like, no, like, what are you doing? First of all, that's my wife. You know, that's my wife. It's not like she was like in disguise. And you assaulted her, so she cut off the hand that assaulted her. And then he cut off the head that belonged to the body that assaulted her. And he was like, you stopped at the hand. You should have went for the whole gosh darn head. And so what the Knight of Swords energy ended up doing was the Knight of Swords ended up twisting that situation into like, see what he did to that political person. They were exiled after that because of what they did to the dude when he was the one in the wrong. And like, that's the Crown Prince. How you gonna? That's how deep into the illusion this Knight of Swords energy had this Queen of Swords. That they got exiled and they were happy. And even when they were exiled, the people still loved them. And now, because they're exiled, they're not living in the palace or whatever. They're living with the people. And so the people are having a blast. And then they're having a blast with the people. And they're still living their best life. But, you know, that Knight of Swords energy was mad. And so the Knight of Swords, first the Knight of Swords was like, they're planning a coup. They're trying to take the throne from you. And then the Queen of Swords was like, that's preposterous. That's ridiculous. First of all, how would they do that? Second of all, why would they do that? And then the Knight of Swords was like, remember that one instance when they killed that political figure? It was a setup. And then she was like, ooh. So basically, the Queen of Swords let this Knight of Swords talk into her ear to the point where she had her son killed so that the other son could take the throne. And then after she had her son killed, she found out the truth. And then she was like, she couldn't live with herself because, like, that was her son. And she loved him dearly. And I'm not going to say that that was her favorite. I don't think she really played favorites. But the Knight of Swords energy did play favorites because the son that took the throne was like, he was able to manipulate. And he wasn't going to get the throne for whatever reason. And so he manipulated the queen into picking the son that he could manipulate. And then at the end of the movie, she found out what really happened, and it was too much for her to bear. And that's very much this energy over here. And that's why, like, with this Queen of Swords and with this Knight of Swords, when you're fixed in this sword energy, when you have status, when we're coming into these moments of transition, it can sometimes work more at your detriment than to your benefit. And that's why it's like with this Five of Wands energy, this king can be a page while still being a king. His mind is open. He's expanding. He's changing as the world is changing. He's incorporating it and ingesting it. And that's also Aquarian energy. With this being Aquarius, Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is the planet of change. It's the planet of rebellion, and it's the planet of the future. And so this King of Swords energy is already focused on the 5D, already focused on the energy to be, and doing whatever it needs to do with this Five of Wands to bring that now, rather than this Knight of Swords, Queen of Swords over here trying to maintain the status quo, right? And so in this space of courage, again, this is having the courage to speak to the things that have yet to be, rather than falling into the old patterns and paradigms because it's where you found comfortability, right? That's the courage here. And it's interesting that we have the Knight, the Queen, and then the King of Swords. But this King of Swords with this Five of Wands is like, hey, things need to change. And what needs to change, because this Five of Wands is a pentacle instead of a pentagram, it's like the world needs to change. Spirit is okay, right? It's the outside world that needs to change. It's the material that needs to change, right? If it was upwards pointing, if it was a pentacle instead of the pentagram, then it's like, spirit changes and the world is fine. But it's like, no, the world needs to change in accordance, in alignment with spirit. And as someone with the sword connected to that, It's time to slice, slice, chop, chop. Ooh, I've been live a lot longer than I thought I was, but that's been like every day. Um, I'm almost done with this series. I only have the third eye and the crown left. I almost came on and did this last night, but I decided to enjoy myself instead. And I did. So here we have the Wheel of Fortune and we have the Seeker of Cups when it comes to not suppression. Yeah, it is suppression. Yeah. Yeah, when it comes to suppression. The Seeker of Cups and the Wheel of Fortune. Now the thing about this Wheel of Fortune is it has thorns all over it. I don't know if you can see in the rod, there's like a staff in this Wheel of Fortune. And it has like it has thorns like all up in there. Can you see them? Yeah, y'all can see them. Let's see. There we go. It got thorns all up in that. And then there's also the Ouroboros, the snake biting its own tail. So there's lots of thorns that you have to overcome. There's the snake that you have to overcome. And then there's the Seeker of Cups. I feel like, honestly, like I said, all of this is separate from this. This energy doesn't have the courage to go after what it wants. This energy doesn't have the courage to speak to what it's actually lacking. This energy doesn't have the courage to accept the fact that, hey, maybe I'm not that great. And there's something about these grand narratives that are spun. And I guess I didn't necessarily want to talk about white supremacy, but we're talking about white supremacy because this is a very white supremacist sort of whatever. And I think one of the ways that the narrative, that the whole manifest destiny and all of this garbage that, led a certain group of European peoples to think that they're above everyone else in the world and to go out and seek to conquer them and to strip them of their own culture and their land and to then force them to assimilate and to homogenize whatever that foolishness was. And if you look at just like the diversity of the planet within species and just like the planet Earth in general, that whole manifest destiny garbage it's garbage. It doesn't even align with the energy of Gaia. It doesn't even align with the energy of Earth that celebrates and flourishes and thrives in diversity. Diversity in climate, diversity in species, diversity in just like we literally went from Pangea to these mini continents to increase the amount of diversity that we get down here, to spice things up, to add to the beauty of life, right? And then you have this energy that would come in and seek to homogenize everything. Like I said, like that energy, it just runs counter to like everything that this planet is about, if you really think about it. Everything that makes this planet beautiful, it runs directly like opposite to it. But one of the things that all of that manifest destiny, like all that it didn't do, is it sold certain groups of people a dream. But ultimately what it led to them being entitled. I'm entitled to fame, I'm entitled to fortune, I'm entitled to abundance, the whole American dream. And it's like sure, everyone can have this American dream, but who is it realistic for? Who more often than not finds themselves as the winners and recipients of the things guaranteed by the American dream, right? And so what happens is, in these diversification efforts, or to make the dream seem inclusive, we have these other people that get status. But when other people get status, it runs again directly opposed to the manifest destiny and to all of these things that certain groups of people feel that is theirs. And so through this frustration of either being rejected by people, not having enough money, not having the wealth, the status, the fame, what it gets is there's a certain amount of deserving that they feel they have, and then it turns nasty. It turns envious, it turns vile, it turns gross. And then the outlet for that anger is whatever minority is around a lot of times. And that's how they don't do their own, I don't want to say how they don't do their own people or how they do their own people a disservice. That's how this whole toxic nasty narrative dream it fuels itself in so many ways. In so many ways. And I feel like it hurts minorities for sure. And especially because of the people who fall into it and then purposefully go out and hurt minorities. But it also hurts the majority because it sells them something that isn't realistic. It's not, at least it's not realistic in the way that it's sold. And so then you end up with people who feel that they're not getting something that they're entitled to, or something that they deserve through sheer virtue of being born in the skin that they were born in, or being born in the area that they were born in, or whatever. And it's like, that's why this Wheel of Fortune with this Seeker of Cups exists outside of all of this foolishness. Honestly, this is an energy that it was never really built to give. And it's impossible to put into that. So I don't even know what to say for this. It's like with the Seeker of Cups, you have the Conqueror up here with the Seeker down here. Never gonna find what you're looking for because you're never gonna find cups in all these swords. And honestly, it's like very puppet type of energy. You're falling exactly into what this energy would have you fall into. And it's like there's this underlying thing that we want to happen, but we can't just come out and flat out say that this is what we want to happen. But we can use our understanding of the human mind and psychology to market it this way, make it purposefully unattainable, and then have you seek other things. And it's just like how there are certain minority communities, or just certain, not even necessarily specifically minority, but how there are certain communities that are forced into less legal ways of obtaining money, wealth, status, whatever, right? Because of the disproportionate access to whatever, and so they seek out these other means. And it's like there are all of these things, all of these roots, all of these tendrils that come out from this grand central thing, and it negatively affects pretty much everyone, honestly. But there are these people who, in their entitlement, would seek to defend that. And then there are also people who would fall into the narrative, who would look at themselves, look at what they don't have, and then look at the narrative as justification, and then hate themselves and people who look like them. And it's very much this like on either side you fall on, you lose type of game, type of situation. And I feel like, yeah, and there are so many parallels that are coming off of that. And I guess this is me speaking my truth, or speaking at least what I've observed. And I feel like the whole, and it's not necessarily a direct parallel, but the whole mask situation versus no mask. I literally, like yesterday, I just unsubscribed from somebody, and it's like I feel like he thinks he's being so. And again, who am I to say that someone is right and someone is wrong? But I feel like he thinks he's being so like bold, and I'm pretty sure he's a Virgo, and that doesn't mean anything. But I feel like I feel like he thinks he's being so like cutting edge and so bold and so this. And then there are people who are like, yeah, God gave us lungs to breathe oxygen. And I'm like, I just want to know if masks are actually killing people. I just want to know if masks are actually killing people, because people are talking about them like people are literally dying. Like people are literally suffocating and asphyxiating and dying because these masks are preventing them from getting enough oxygen to breathe. Are people in stores, grocery stores, falling out because of masks? And if you have a medical condition, girl, you got a medical condition and you probably shouldn't be wearing one, and that's fine. But it's like, again, in the simplicity of what it is, I'm wearing this mask to protect you. I was playing Persona, and someone was like, they were talking about last night, there was like, oh, somebody's not feeling good, and so they're wearing a mask to keep other people from getting sick or something like that. And that's literally what they're for. there are literally places in the world where people already wear masks in consideration for other people when they're sick. And the thing about this is, or what they're saying is, first of all, there's this period of time before symptoms even develop where you can still spread it. So wear the mask to keep yourself from spreading it. There are people who are asymptomatic, who may never express symptoms, but who can still carry it, or it may still be active in them. So if you're one of those people, wear the mask from spreading it. It's about keeping yourself from spreading it. It's about minorly inconveniencing yourself for the greater good of the collective. And that's another thing that I feel like we really have to ask, are some people, I think that's something that some people aren't ready for. I think there are people who aren't necessarily racist who also understand the amount of privilege that they have in this society. And I think there are some people who aren't willing to let go of that privilege, quite frankly. And I have a friend who isn't, who is a minority, and he was like, if I'm being honest, like if I had that privilege, I don't know if I would give it up either. And I think it's like one of those, like, are we, and I think that's one of the gateways to the 5D and to coming into lighter energy. Are you willing to minorly inconvenience yourself? Are you willing to let go of an unfair advantage to all of these earthly things over someone else in order to come into this? Or are you too comfortable? Are you too self-serving to care? And like, he was going off because somebody complimented somebody else's mask. He was like, I was in the store and somebody said, "Cute mask you're wearing," and he's like, it's like, you're not complimenting their hair, you're not complimenting their eyes, you're not complimenting this, like, you're not complimenting their heart, you're complimenting their mask. Like, this is what we're normalizing. And I'm like, girl, people compliment people's shoes, people compliment people's clothes, people compliment people's watches, people compliment people's hats. Are you losing your mind every time someone's like, "Oh my gosh, I like that shirt"? No. And it's like, again, it's like, in my mind, what every time I've seen the mask, and for the people who already wear masks, it's about minorly inconveniencing yourself to keep you from affecting and afflicting people to the point, we're dealing with this specifically, to the point where their life could literally be on the line. And you're saying that you can't care enough about other people to minorly inconvenience yourself to wear a cute mask and dress it up. And he's like, this is how we normalize things. And I'm like, yes, but what about all of the things that we're normalizing in ways that have impacts that are already much more significant than just like this whole mask thing? And it's like, if I'm complimenting you on how cute your mask is, in my mind, that's like, it's like we're not in that fear that we were initially facing. Some people still are, sure, maybe. But originally, it was about confronting the fear, right? And then the masks came along, and again, it was about the fear. But we can wear the mask in reverence for, in respect of, someone else's right to live. And we can take on that minor inconvenience as someone who will stand for and with each other in order to prevent that from happening, and not automatically be pigeonholed into the fear. And it's like, I don't know, it's like, in my mind, it's like all this light you supposedly work in, and you can't wear a mask to keep somebody else safe from you. Like, oh, my vibration is high enough. If I do get it, I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to get whatever. Okay, fine. You're good. You believe you're good. You know you're good, but you can't care enough about the people around you. I don't know. And again, it's different perspectives, right? We're all speaking our own truth and we're all speaking from our own perspective. But it's like, looking at what the mask is marketed as, I don't know if I'm being a sheep falling into a program where we normalize caring for other people to the point where we can minorly inconvenience ourselves. Like, I don't know, sign me up for it. Because I've seen what the world is and what the world has been when no one else has cared about anyone outside of themselves. And that's not a world that I care to continue to live in, honestly. And so, I don't know. It's like cute mask. He was so triggered because somebody said cute mask. And I'm like, and then he's like, I just unsubscribed. Because I'm like, I don't know. At first, I was like, there are certain things that, I'm not necessarily the type of person that automatically has to silence other opinions, especially if I feel like there's some weight or validity to them. I feel like there are legitimately people on the other side of a lot of things that I'm not on that have legitimate concerns, but I also think that there are some people who are more self-serving and selfish that I don't necessarily like care for. And it blew my mind. And that's another reason why I feel like this, like the Seeker of Cups and the Wheel of Fortune, is so outside. Like, this energy doesn't have the courage to face itself. How is this energy going to have the courage to face the snake coiled around this Wheel of Fortune at the top of the point where all the power actually is? It never will. It never will. If it had the courage to do that, it would have taken that route in the first place rather than taking. And then over here, with more aligned energy, we have, is this the Four of Wands? It is the Four of Wands and the Five of Swords. Five of Wands, now we have the Five of Swords. There are 3 swords downward, there are 2 swords up, and then there are 4 wands in this shape. And this Four of Wands is interesting because we've seen the World card twice before already, and the 4 wands are shaped in the same mandorla type of shape that the laurel wreaths are shaped in the World card, right? And then we also have this Five of Swords. We got 2 swords with crescent hilts, or with crescent pommel stones and crystal hilts. And then we have 3 swords with, the standard. There is, what is this? It looks like lungs. It looks like lungs. But the lungs also look like wings. And there are like roots in here. It looks like lungs. And it's interesting because we're talking about speaking our truth, right? Now the 3 swords are piercing through these lungs and whatever this is. The 2 swords in the bottom are not. And lungs are that space where the exchange of gas happens. And I feel like this sort of reiterates that exchange that needs to, again, because this isn't the sun, it's a star. It's about speaking and listening. It's about, when we breathe out, we breathe in, we're changing carbon dioxide for oxygen. The oxygen benefits us. We take it in, the carbon dioxide benefits the plants. They take it in, they give us oxygen. We take it in, we give them carbon dioxide. They take it in, it's this exchange that we have between us. But our ability to exchange thoughts, our ability to exchange ideas, our ability to see, since our ability to exchange has been hampered and dampened, our ability to perceive of situations outside of the large situation has also been dampened and hampered. It's like our brains are starved of oxygen, so there's no reason why we can't think of anything else besides everything here. There's no reason why we can't see beside this extreme polarity. And honestly, I feel like that's what it is. Because I feel like that's so far. And it's interesting because I feel like a lot of people will say things. I feel like this person in particular would say, like, good and evil are illusions, and that's like duality and polarity, and it's bad. But at the same time, you're so extreme on this pole right now. And I feel like you're so extreme on this pole because you're looking at the potential narrative or one side of the narrative. Again, you're looking at one of the roads that lead to this place, where if you look at the other side, I feel like it would still lead you to the same place. Wear a gosh darn mask, man. It's like it's not killing people. And like I wear glasses, right? I wear my mask and my glasses fog up when I'm in the middle of the store, and it's annoying. But you know what I do? I find a way to route across that problem. And some people will be like, yeah, because you're a sheep and you're so far into the system, blah, blah, blah. Because I can minorly inconvenience myself, and I can do what's within my power to make my inconvenience less minor. No, to make my inconvenience less inconvenient, to mitigate the inconvenience, because in my, like, even if I couldn't keep my glasses from fogging up, it's something that I'm willing to do because I don't know, I care enough about the people around me. Because I don't want to come into a 5D Earth and be literally the only person on the planet or something like that. Or to be the only person of like a few colonies on the planet. Like, I don't want to live in a 5D where it's some post apocalyptic movie. Like, I don't know. And I feel like that for a lot of people, it seems to be either this or that. I'm going to choose to manifest a neither, where I don't have to worry about the bad on this side. I don't have to worry about the bad on that side. And I can still, it's not that I'm not willing to, but, there was a period in time when it was a little hard to get some food, sure. But where was that mass starvation food shortage until, like, all of that stuff that people were talking about? And that's not to say that, there isn't bad being done. It can always be worse. But at the same time, that's a truth that I choose not to put my coins into. And that's what this person said. And it's like, you can put your coins into that truth by not wearing the mask, sure. But at the same time, I feel like you could get to that truth and stand with each other enough to the point where, I don't know. And again, maybe it's just my test right now. Maybe it's just the way I'm looking at the world right now to, see what world I want to manifest. Because again, like, I wouldn't mind living in a world where people are considerate enough of each other where they would do something like that. Because like I said, there are countries where people already do that. The difference is what? You don't feel sick right now, or you don't care if you get sick right now. But once you get sick, it's too late. Like, once you get it, like, to find out that it's real by getting it yourself and then being on your deathbed potentially and be like, wow, man, I wish I would have just worn the mask. And apparently there was some person in like Texas or whatever who literally said just that. Man, I wish I would have worn the mask because it's not worth it. Okay, I had to make sure I didn't do that wrong. And it's like, I feel like in some ways we're tempting the hands of fate, honestly. Because I think there is a certain point that we're supposed to get within all of this. I think, yes, we're not supposed to give in to fear, but also we're supposed to learn to ask what the divine would have us do at this time. And I'm not saying that the divine is like, wear your mask or else, but it's almost like an escalation protocol. It brings to mind, there's this one episode of Eureka where they have, it's like a missile launch drill, and they're using this computer, right? And like they have the technology to make it completely holographic, but it's like this sort of ultra real type situation. And the sheriff is like, why does it need to be this real? Like, we have the technology where people don't actually have to get hurt. And then they're like, well, if it wasn't this real, then, we wouldn't take it seriously and blah, blah, blah. And because that's why, like, it got more and it was a computer that ran the simulation. And so the computer basically sabotaged itself in order to make it more and more and more real. They thought the test was over, but the test had just begun, because that's what the program did. And then by the end of the episode, the sheriff, who's the least bright individual, but who's probably the most intuitive, honestly. Everyone else is like a certified genius, right? And they're the best and the brightest at what they do. And at the end of the day, he's like, wait, this is all stuff that happened in the simulation. So what if the computer is still running the program? And then they're like, well, that's impossible because like the computer shut down. And then he was like, well, let's talk to the person who made the program. And he's like, yeah, the computer could do that. And it could have, like, the last thing that it would have done, the last program, the last objective that it would have run is to do this before it took itself out. And then they ended up figuring out that it was like still testing them, and they still had to run through it, and they had to do it right. but it was escalated to that point because they weren't taking it seriously enough. And all I'm saying is, I think we really, like, it makes sense that there's a second wave or whatever, that there would be a second wave or whatever. With the way that we've handled it in this country, it makes sense that we're still in wave one, honestly. But it's like, hopefully we don't have to escalate this to the point where it gets more and more and more real. We can learn what we need to learn so that the cure can be released, either through whatever, and not even necessarily a vaccine, right? We can find out, hey, this actually does work and you don't need a vaccine, we just cure it, right? It's just like if you get the common cold, go to the drugstore, pick up some over-the-counter cough syrup or whatever, and then, take it, and within a few days you'll be better, right? Maybe there'll be a new OTC drug where it's like, okay, if you get this, go to the drugstore, pick this up, and then you'll be good. No need to vaccinate for the people worried about a vaccine and all kinds of stuff, right? But I feel like it's not going to happen until we prove that we're sort of ready. And I don't know, I would just I already know one person. And again, it's like, people come on with their story, so who's to say whatever. But I already know of one spiritual person who actually got it, who didn't think it was real, who didn't buy into all of the fear and stuff like that, but she still ended up getting it. And again, it's like I would hate for us to escalate to the point where some of the people who are telling us not to do it then ended up getting it. And they're like, hey guys, it turns out this is actually real. Let's take this seriously. And that's another reason why I don't mind, right? It's a minor inconvenience. What am I losing right now? And I can choose my perspective at the same time without necessarily falling into everything. But I feel like it's another thing. Some people will say you shouldn't say certain words ever. And I'd say, let's focus more on the intention and the vibration that I put out when I speak this word and not what happens when you speak it. I don't know. I feel like part of it, it's stuff I shouldn't mess with. Part of it is also me coming into my own sovereignty and speaking my own truth and utilizing, like the book said, know the place from which you speak. So if you're speaking a word from a place that is not sort of within you or that does not hold a vibration, right? Sometimes I say words that I learned in context and I ask Siri to define it for me. And then if it's what I want, I keep it. If it isn't, I change it up, right? We're going to be getting the final shuffle. Anyway, this kind of sort of with the throat portal, I don't know. It's the power of the throat to affirm and reaffirm, confirm and transfigure reality. But there are certain things that are fixed. There are certain things that aren't going to go away just because you speak them. And because for every action, there is a reaction. For every action, there is a consequence. And since this is a planet of free will, it is ergo thereto, so for thus also a planet of consequence. And you can't speak your way out of a consequence. That's not how that works. It's not how that happens. Who is this? Empowerment. Okay, work. Bottom of the deck is Illumination, number 23. It's expression, positivity, and joy and inspiration. I don't know if this is saying I'm trying to illuminate people to the truth of what's going on, to empower you to really speak, but the card itself said, always know the place from which you speak. Excuse me, and if you're speaking from an unconscious or a subconscious place where you're not fully aware of the power of all the words that you speak, then yeah, maybe you fall into don't say this because of this and that. But if I'm using a specific word to communicate a specific intention, it rewrites and weaves that word into a tapestry that shows what I needed to see, right? It's like never use black because it's a dark color and it'll put shadows in places and then blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, sometimes you need the black and the darker colors to contour and then you need the lighter colors to highlight, and all of it together gives you an image that's more realistic and real. It's about weaving it into the tapestry in the way that illuminates and brings the whole thing to life, right? Going back into that arachne energy, right? Weaving the tapestry, being turned into the spider, the tails we weave and the webs we find ourselves entangled upon. With the wild unknown, going back to that 8 of Pentacles, which is this period of adepthood, this period of, again, we have empowerment right here until we achieve and attain our own mastery. And the other card that came out is the Crown Portal, Divinity, Unity, and Separation, number 8. Empowerment is number 13. Grounded, strength, and stamina. We got empowerment in the crown portal. You came out early, girl. We doing you the day after tomorrow. But she wanted to make herself known, I guess. What's this? Sanctuary. Number 35. Healing and comfort, faith and restoration. 2335. Illumination and sanctuary. I don't know. It's just in my mind. It's like I'm really watching this man get triggered over masks, and he's not the only person. But I just decided, I can't watch this anymore. Because again, the way I see it, because I don't buy into the fear program and the fear paradigm, but I also don't buy into the dismissal program and paradigm, because I don't need for this to escalate anymore to be looking at, hey, regardless of if this is real or not, what should I get out of this? Because I guess over here, I've been feeling Job energy. Nothing happens in this world without the blessing of the divine. And so if the divine is allowing this to come up right now, what is the divine trying to get me to see? Right? Not what is the dominant control program, what is it? I feel like that's also part of it, but it's outside of what the control program is trying to make me feel. What is the divine trying to get me to see right now? And honestly, what I'm seeing right now is how much some of these spiritual people, I don't want to say how much they don't actually care for other people, but it's interesting. Because like I said about unity consciousness earlier, unity consciousness is very much like you are me and I am you. So if you, and this person says it specifically, this person is like, so when you do me wrong, in reality, you're doing yourself wrong. And if you knew that, then you wouldn't do me wrong. But it sounds like a lot of times now, especially, it's a lot of me. There's a lot of me type of energy when it comes to certain brands of spirituality. And that's what's being illuminated and highlighted to me in particular right now. And that's one thing that I don't like. Because I'm like, I don't know. And that's another reason why I don't like the way that people market duality, or the way people market unity consciousness and duality as they do. Because it's like, it seems like it tends to fall back into a me. You're just like me, so I should respect you. You're just like me. You're more like me than you're different than me. So then it's like, but why do I have to be you? Why do I have to be like you to deserve respect? I don't demand that anybody be like me to deserve respect. Like, I just respect them because they are who they are. And to me, it's like, it's a no-brainer thing to do. Like, you ain't gotta be me. Hello? And I don't want to say like the further from me, the better, but I already have me in my life. I'm not necessarily looking for more. That's where I'll leave it. I love me and I appreciate me. And I love my father and I love my mother and I appreciate them both. But what I don't need is another piece of fragment of Patrick walking around out here. Or it's like, at least if you're going to be me, then be some different sides of me that I'm not always. So, we get to have fun. And then, like, be me with a twist. Me but interesting. Me but different. Like, yeah, maybe. But, like, I don't know. Then we have the Six of Wands over here. The card of victory. Bottom of the deck is the Conqueror of Swords. And that's what this energy... Well, this was the more aligned energy today. But it's interesting that Conqueror of Swords pops back up with the Six of Wands at the top. That's the thing that the Conquerors of Swords energy, sometimes maybe that's like the only truth that it sees, though. It's like that victory at all costs type of energy. That entitlement type of energy. It's like, someone told me I would be victorious. I know I'm going to be victorious. But it's like, if you know you're going to win either way, why not take a nicer route, a less shady route, a less tear other people down type of route? You know what I mean? Or route or whatever. On the bottom of the deck over here, we have, or at the top of the deck, is the Three of Wands and the Eight of Cups at the bottom. Eight of Cups, there we go. She's been featured a lot lately. And the Three of Wands. She's also been featured a lot lately. It's about walking away from the things as they were to really manifest what we want. Because if we really look at it, if we really think about it, there's more that needs to change than we may be comfortable with to get where we're actually trying to go. And if you can't, and that's another thing, if you're not minorly inconvenienced to get the change that you want, if you can't minorly inconvenience yourself for the sake of other people and the overall well being of everyone and the planet, right? Then it's like, where was I going with that? If you can't minorly inconvenience yourself, then it's like, well, what are you willing to do at the same time or in the same breath? It's like you can't do anything, you're not willing to give anything up, you're not willing to make anything happen, you don't want to move at all, you just want everything now. And it's like, that's not how it works. Not even spirituality works like that. You still got to do something, right? Sometimes what you got to do is just be like listening and open to whatever. So I know I spoke a lot today. I guess we get into that point. We're approaching the third eye. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised. We already hit the heart. When we were at the heart, I was like, ooh, I'm surprised. We're approaching the third eye. Before we get to the third eye, we got to get to the throat, which is also interesting. So it's like, again, I feel like it sort of reclarifies, reedifies, reiterates what I was saying earlier. That like sometimes we have to be in this space. We have to speak from ourselves in order to know ourselves, right? It's like you got to speak your truth before you can more fully perceive the truth. Interesting. All right, so I'm gonna shut this down. I'm probably gonna go live on my legacy channel later because I kind of sort of wanted to do it yesterday, and then when I was asleep or this morning, it kind of came to me. So I'll be over there eventually. All right, I'll catch y'all later, and I don't know. Like the book said, critical thinking and applying skills. I love it. I didn't know what doing bibliomancy with a book from my seventh or eighth grade world geography class would do, but it actually gave us stuff that we can work with. Pay attention to the climate that you plant your seeds in versus the climate that maybe you planted seeds in the past or that other people are planting seeds in. And also at the same time, for these spiritual seeds that we're planting, they have the ability to influence the world around us. So what climate are you kind of sort of creating for yourself with where you put your ideals and your beliefs? I know that there are some people who take a very sort of doom and gloom, prepared, like don't take the vaccine because of it's going to have this and it's going to have that, and be self-sufficient and do all this and do all that type of approach. And if that's the climate that you're sort of preparing for yourself, it's going to be the climate you prepare yourself for. There are some people who are stuck in are who are truly in fear, and if that's the climate that you're in, that's going to be what you put yourself in. There are people who are doing all kinds of things, and when it comes to speaking your truth, and with speaking your truth coming before the third eye, with the truth preceding the vision, then it's like, I don't know, now's the time to, as if it weren't already, it's more so now, the time to speak things as you wish for them to be. And that's another reason why I think I am paying a little bit more attention right now. Not necessarily to like the news, but to more like social media and stuff like that. And also sometimes the news, but because it's playing in the front room if I ever go to the kitchen or whatever. But it's like I'm trying my best to do both. Look at the truth of the reality as it is. Keep in mind the reality that I want to go to, and speak to the things that I wish to see change. And it's like the more I talk about it, the more, again, I discover myself. And the type of world I want to live in, and what I want spirituality to look like in my world. Because I don't want spirituality to look like people who can't care enough about other people to minorly inconvenience themselves. I don't want me spirituality in my world. And I don't want, abundance, riches, fame, success type of spirituality in my world either. I want a more all-inclusive spirituality that can, again, accept the fact that good and bad exist. Duality on this planet, especially on this plane, in this realm especially, is a thing. And we are beings and creatures of contradiction that are uniquely given the opportunity to navigate duality in a way that serves us, but also puts us in a space to serve others around us. And that also, oh, I lost it. What else was it? It can accept duality, and it can also accept that, again, with this being a planet of free choice, it is also a plane and planet of consequence and a plane and planet of repercussion. And as people in a collective, it's like there are certain truths of what this world has been. And because it has been what it has been, there are things now that are now, regardless of if we see them or not. And I think, again, that speaks to the self and the others, and how we're both individuals and parts of the collective. And as parts of a collective, there are things that maybe we have to deal with sometimes that we maybe not as individuals put into. But again, with that me brand of spirituality, it will convince you that none of that is like happening, or none of that is real, or none of that is valid. Instead of putting you in a place to rise and address it, and to add your voice in a way that actively gets you to where you want to be, instead of muting yourself on the Zoom call that is that conversation. You know, you have not because you ask not. Speaking ye shall have. Seeking ye shall find. If you put on the blindfold and earplugs and you don't say anything, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, it's like, yeah, I wonder if, there's peace and harmony in a black hole where there's nothing. Like, that's the unique challenge on this planet. That's our unique opportunity to grow and evolve as humans. And honestly, if you really think about it, that's one of the things that I love about us being made in the image of God. And Jesus said, all of these things and more like that I have done. All of these things that I have done, ye too shall be able to do and more. Or something like that. When Jesus said we can do everything and more that he did. And on all of these other systems, like when you reach nirvana, I think nirvana is more so escaping like the mortal coil and not needing to reincarnate anymore. But if we look at it, it's like we have this unique opportunity in the world that we live in to rise above duality to the point where we can live in that space of contradiction. And I don't know, coming to my mind right now, it's like that is so close to divinity and to creator, where you can be in both spaces and still be you, where you can utilize the light and the dark to make a whole creation, right? Because it's like seasons and cycles. First, God created the sun and the moon and all of this stuff, right? You create the earth and then you create the space, or you create the earth in this space. There's the black box, and then there's everything outside of the black box. It's this ability to do both and to look at both and to, in some ways, be master of both. And then again, to come into a greater and greater and greater sense of self where you can exert your power and not need to be in a vacuum, where you can exist as you are in a world, even if the world doesn't agree with you, and stand so firmly and so strongly, again, going back to yesterday with that hanged one and the high sage and that sun and all of that energy, where you can hold your own light so strong that the world shapes and forms around you to incorporate who you are into it. Like, that is like, that's it. where you don't need to exist in a vacuum. And like I said, like, you're not grounded. Okay, from in my perspective, you're not fully grounded and you're not fully centered if you can't go outside and, have the breeze. Like, if the wind can't even like whisper in your ear without you just like flying all the way to, I don't know, Tippecanoe and Timbuktu, right? If the wind whispers in your ear and you get sent halfway across the planet, like, how grounded are you really, right? You should be able to withstand the elements of the outside and be unmoved. To not be moved from your groundedness, but to bend and bow and sway in the wind and to blow and breeze like the wind through the trees when you need to be both the wind and the tree that stands strong, to be the thunder and the lightning and the water, to be the house and the roof and everything, to be all of that. When we're talking about that brand of unity consciousness, you should be able to be all of that but still be you, right? And not be lost in it. But I think that's one of the perspectives that maybe a lot of people right now aren't necessarily going to get to because they're so focused on. But again, it's like, when all you've done in your life is give away your power, when all you've existed in is a system that thrives on the power that you give it, then it's like it makes sense where you're like, no, I'm not going to buy into this. I'm not going to continue to give away my power. But there's this, like, the world is everything that the world is. And we don't create in a vacuum, right? And I know a lot of times I think I talk about it like we kind of sort of do. And it's like we kind of sort of do to a certain extent, but then we don't, because then it also has to work with everything around it, right? It has to be in phase, right? It's like you can have a million Jeeps in these sort of dimensions that exist outside of this dimension, but if it doesn't work with this one, you'll never experience it. But that's where you need to align your power with other powers, I guess. I don't know. All right, y'all. I've been rambling for long enough. I don't know. I guess it's just like, for some strange reason, if I think about it too much, I feel like I might cry. But it's really not disheartening, and not even disappointing. But it's just like this energy up here. It's like, even when you adopt a different perspective, you can still see and feel the hurt and the pain that people are actively opposing and are actively trying to pull themselves out of when they adopt certain ideologies. And they go so hard in that, again, because the way the system was set up and the way that a lot of us have lived our lives to this point is giving away our power. But there's a difference between giving away your power and cooperating with someone. There's a difference between giving your power away to someone and combining your power with someone else's in order to come into something greater and something more and something that works on this planet, on this plane. And maybe that's the reason why a while ago, in one of those roll the dice videos where the 4 of zones came up, and I was like, why am I talking about this like it's like the scholar of zones? Or, yeah, where it's like the sage of zones or something like that. When I was like, there are certain rules that we need to know, certain ways of being down here that keeps things stable and that keeps things locked into this reality that we need to know before we really start trying to manifest or create something of our own. And I feel like that applies. But when we don't look at and observe the world for what it is, when we don't accept the fact that consequence is a direct result of choice, then we can't fully operate from that space of choice and fully operate from the space of manifesting what it is that we choose to manifest. Because when it's like, you have to accept both sides of the same coin. Duality is what it is. There is good, there is evil, there is hot, there is cold, there is the sun, there is the moon, there is light, there is dark. There is winter, there is spring, there is summer, there is fall. When we can live in these world, and when we can live in this world of contradiction and accept that it is a world of contradiction, then we can use every tool to our advantage, right? It's even like, even in the cards, even with energy, like there's masculine and feminine energy. That's duality right there. So like, to not accept duality is to not accept the feminine and masculine sides of energy that, when together, bring forth into this world something that can interact and something that can stand and something that can be locked into this experience long enough and to the point where you actually get to experience. It's all interconnected, right? I don't know. This went to a place that I didn't necessarily expect it to go to after I spoke as strongly as I did, but maybe that's another, like, maybe more subconscious reason why I'm upset, or why I feel the way I feel, or why I choose the perspective that I choose, right? Because I don't want to live in a bubble. And it just so happens that I've met someone that I want to experience forever with. And again, it's through that person, in some way that it's kind of related to that person, but not. It's just like, I don't want to live in a bubble. And so I have to accept choice and consequence. They're one and the same. You can't have choice and free will without consequence. You can't manifest something out of nothing. It always costs something, even if the something is something more ethereal. You're building off of something, right? Even if you even if you literally have the ability to make it manifest out of thin air, where are those atoms, where are those molecules coming from? Maybe from a dimension where they already exist, and what you're doing is you're translocating it from that unseen parallel reality into this seen, experienced, felt reality. But again, it's already there. You're just, through the power of your will, moving it from a space where it isn't to a space where it is. Why am I talking about that? Because then you still have to understand choice and consequence, right? You want a Jeep, you manifest the Jeep, you still got to have insurance for that Jeep if you're driving it. You still may have to pay to, like, maintain that Jeep if you're driving it. It's still going to cost you something over here, right? For choice, there is always consequence. And when you can't accept consequence, you're not granted access and permission to those higher levels of choice. You're just not, because they come hand in hand. And it's like, if you don't accept consequence, we'd have people out here manifesting all kinds of stuff. Like, like, I'm pretty sure that doesn't work. I'm pretty sure that doesn't work. I saw it in a dream one time. It doesn't work. That's why. So anyway, all right. This really went there. Okay. I don't know how many people are gonna get this far into it. But also, it's not my job to know how many people get this far into it. It's honestly just my job to speak right now in this space that I have created and cultivated for myself, where I can speak more freely, whereas I didn't necessarily feel the comfortability with my previous channel. And again, like, I've never necessarily felt like I'm somebody for everyone. And in these times, what I'm primarily focused on, what I'm primarily looking at, what I feel primarily led and drawn to, is not the quote-unquote unawakened collective and the masses of people. What I'm most drawn to is the people who will call themselves spiritual, the people who will call themselves awakened and enlightened and, light warriors and light workers and stuff like that. Those are the people that I'm primarily drawn to. I've always been drawn to. And I feel like it's another reason why, like, the channel in the past isn't, like, it is what it is, but I don't know, even from the beginning, it's like, and that's why I'm glad I had that channel. And I'm glad I have this one, because now I feel like I can exist more comfortably in both spaces. And that platform is bigger too, It's almost like it's like, if I look at the number of subscribers, it's 11 times bigger. I have 3 over here and then 33 over there. So 333. um, and so I guess I am feeling a little bit of a responsibility. Sometimes, not really a responsibility. It's just like sometimes I'll be like, hey, I should go live on the old channel, and I'll go live on the old channel, right? And again, because the platform is bigger, the reach is a little bit bigger. There are some people who I interacted with who have platforms bigger than mine, and who I still, because I still like I watch from that channel, so who I still interact with over there. And so if they want to check me out or if they want to see what my perspective is for whatever reason, then they can click on and find out what I'm talking about, or not. It's all about, again, like yesterday with the hanged one going into that high sage. It's a moment of preparation. I don't know why I'm collecting all the things I'm collecting, but I know they'll serve me when they need to. And it's my job to come into my voice in the space that I've cultivated, even if initially it was a space that was safe from other people, in a space that I've cultivated, to give myself to learn more of myself. And that's honestly what I've been doing as I've been speaking. I've been learning more and more about me, and not necessarily learning more about me, but just coming into more of who I am, honestly. You know? Anyway, oh my gosh, I'm still rambling. Okay, I'm going to shut this down. I'll probably go live on my Legacy channel, and I'll pull, I'm thinking of using the Mystic Mondays, separate them out, major, minor, and court card, and then probably do a few of those because I really, really, really enjoy the major minor court. So that's what I'm gonna do. All right, I'll catch y'all whenever I catch y'all. Bye. And I don't know. It's like, I guess, and it kind of sort of runs more from the previous video. Um, but don't be afraid to tap into what that future space could be, but in a way, it's like, don't be afraid to go way down the line of where you want to be. Especially, ooh, girl, the way some things are lining up, I'm like, ooh, it's definitely a journey to be comfortable with all that. Um, but also, don't be afraid to just like look a few weeks out, right? Because again, with choice and consequence, we're still going to face the consequences for the choices that we've already made. But just because we're going through a period of consequence doesn't mean that we can't still strive for beyond that. We can take the consequence in stride and still make the best choices, right? Anyway,